Woman who struggles with anxiety, then this month's book therapy pick is for you. Around here, my name is Diana Garcia. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Florida, owner of a private practice called Nurturing Minds Counseling. My monthly book therapy series is where I pick one mental health self-help book to review, recommend, and at least pick out 3 highlights from the book, insights just in case you don't actually get to pick up the book. So let's jump into this month's pick. You can see from the screen, this month's pick is Be Mighty, A Woman's Guide to Liberation from Anxiety, Worry, and Stress Using Mindfulness and Acceptance by Dr. Jill A. Stoddard. She's a psychologist. I've actually followed her, have a newsletter, follow her on Instagram. She's also part of a podcast. But pretty much, I really enjoy picking up books that are related on acceptance and commitment therapy, which is what this book has, a lot of tools and interventions from that modality. The book, the premise, as you can see from the summary, it's really all focused, clearly geared towards women, but women who struggle with anxiety, stress, overwhelm, and giving them concrete tools how to move through that and ultimately be mighty. So a big portion of the book is learning how to change behaviors, kind of step into the woman you want to be. And then she kind of goes through different skills. She explains them. She does a lot of metaphors. I think she does a really great job of explaining these concepts in an easy to understand way, and then really kind of highlighting them for you, wrapping them up through these exercises so you can apply it to your life. Number 1, as you can see from the screen, again, I really wanted to highlight a little bit of the difference between anxiety and stress, since, again, the majority of the book is focused on women who struggle with anxiety and really helping them learn how to let go of the constant struggle with anxiety, worry, and stress. But it's helpful to maybe even break it down what the difference is between the two. So I'll actually start with stress. Stress, as you can see from the right, it's actually a response to a specific situation. So if you have an interview coming up or a presentation, you will have you might have a stressful response to that stressor, right? And you might not notice that the stress goes away until you've actually gone through it. Typically what you'll notice is once that stressor is gone, you've gone through it, then the stress goes away, right? So after the interview or after the presentation, you feel like back to your normal self. She also talks about, or she gives definitions that it's helpful to think of stress as a state where you're prepared for action, right? So, and even in this example, you're prepared to take on the interview or prepared for the presentation. Something that she talks about, it's like, be wary of really thinking like, well, stress is just because of a stressful situation. It's actually not. It's your appraisal of the situation. Because think about it. Something that you might perceive as stressful, a friend or a partner or a family member might not. So, for instance, I know I get really stressed when I'm out with my friends or out in a restaurant and I feel like we've taken too long at the table and the waiter or waitress is walking back and forth. I start to get really stressed by that. I'm like, oh my God, we're wasting their time. We're taking a table, like we should go. And I have friends that they find it funny because they don't feel stressed by this. It doesn't cause any reaction for them. But it's just, again, because that's something that isn't stressful for them. So really when we think of a situation, it's when we appraise it as a threat and we appraise our ability to handle it as less than. So our coping mechanisms, we feel like we might not be able to cope with it, hence why there's more stress. Anxiety, it's when it's a little bit more consistent and it lingers, right? So it's not necessarily just situational. It can be, but again, once the situation resolves itself, the anxiety is still there, right? So in my example, even after like kicking butt on the performance or presentation, you still feel really nervous about your job performance and you still kind of have this like just overall sense of anxiety about it. So even though the stressor has gone away, that anxiety kind of lingers. Another helpful way to think about it is that when you're prepared for perceived danger, right? And perceived because a lot of time our anxious thoughts aren't always correct or right or like appraising a situation accurately. And then I like that she added kind of these 3 amigos that really fuel anxiety. And that's what she called the 3 amigos. The first one is really intolerance of uncertainty. The second one, it's perceived lack of control. So not feeling in control and not liking that sense of lack of control, which again, most people don't like that. But again, when you notice that's a really elevated kind of discomfort for you, like you really like to stay in control. And then the third one, it's when there's an overinflated sense of responsibility, right? So you feel responsible more so than maybe some of your peers to take on challenges or handle situations. Let's jump into insight number 2. Like I said earlier, the book really has a lot of tools and techniques from acceptance and commitment therapy. And one of the premises in ACT for short, it's really leaning into your values and showing up as the type of person that you want to be. And again, even I think the book like Be Mighty really kind of has this stance throughout the book of like noticing your values, noticing how you want to show up, and really kind of gaining clarity on that. So this is actually an exercise from, I think, one of the middle chapters, the chapters on one of the chapters related to values. And so the exercise is the me I choose to be, right? And so she kind of asks you to think about a recent situation where you feel like you didn't really handle it the best, like you're less than excited about your actions or behaviors. Let's be really clear, regardless of the outcome of the situation, more so that you're not really excited about how you showed up to that moment. So it's helpful then to think about like what thoughts and feelings did the situation trigger? What did you actually do, right? So what behaviors, what actions did you take or not take in that moment? And what was kind of the payoff? So what did the choice get you? How did you feel immediately after? Was there kind of positives, pros, cons, kind of cost, impact? And really it's important to know, like, even if you didn't show up in the best way, there's something about that maybe felt like either reinforcing or motivating, because all behaviors make sense, even if it's a small one, right? So like if you slam the door on your way out when you're really angry at someone, even if that's not your best self, maybe in the moment that feels good, right? And so again, just really kind of noticing that and being honest with yourself. And then the last kind of two questions was the choice in line with the me you truly wish to be. If you could go back and hit rewind and do a do-over, what would you do differently and why? Right? So I really like this exercise, one, because not only does it really help you start to understand different situations, like what is it about this situation that's kind of getting you a little bit stuck? Like what are the thoughts and feelings in that moment that start to show up that maybe you need to learn to work through in order to show up differently, right? And then to really start to understand like what's the impact of your behaviors, right? And really, is this the type of person you want to show up in this scenario? And it can be any type of scenario. It can be parenting, it can be work, it can be in relationships, whatever scenario. It's just kind of really getting clear. And then what you would want to do differently, right? So what behaviors you'd like to change. I think a huge caveat that I want to give with this exercise, if you do it, it's really noticing if you start to get really self-critical or shame yourself, because that's not the point and that kind of defeats the purpose. It's more really about you starting to understand the cost, the impact, what's going on for you underneath the surface, and then really kind of tap into like the type of person that you really want to be, right? Those small behaviors, what they look like. So I hope this exercise is helpful for you, because again, I thought this was a really good one from the book. In the comments below, if you did this exercise, what resonated, what came up for you, anything that really stuck out for you. Let me know in the comments below. Insight number 3, it's actually a fun little diagram, but I think it's really helpful. The cycle of anxious uncertainty. So going back, like I said, insight 1, kind of the intolerance of certainty is something that can really fuel anxiety. And so really kind of this is the cycle that she talks about that really maintains that a little bit. So let's say if we start off with that sense of uncertainty, that triggers anxiety, and then you do something, right? So get my fix. It's really like, what do you do when that anxiety shows up to try to make it go away, right? Whatever behavior that looks like, whether that's seeking reassurance, whether that's over-researching, whether that's, again, drinking, numbing out, whatever that looks like, then it's like, okay, that short-term relief that shows up, or just kind of reassurance, if it is you seeking reassurance for someone, that's the next step. And then usually though, again, kind of really important to notice short-term relief. Usually though, that will come back, then there's more questions, and then you have to start the cycle over again, right? You have to start kind of that uncertainty again. So this kind of really maintains that loop. And so really one of the exercises was, one, just to know and understand that. It's helpful to know this pattern and how it could be keeping you stuck. But also then it's really helpful to know what do you do with that fix, right? So what are the behaviors that you do to get your fix? Because then that's also some like work that you can do to start to shift that, right? Then the piece though, it's when you start to recognize like what you do to kind of get instant gratification, it's also knowing that, okay, what do I have to do? What behavior can I do differently in this moment to not engage in this fix? But also then what am I going to have to feel, right? Because you're not getting that short-term relief or reassurance. Like what discomfort will show up for me that I have to be willing to sit with to kind of break free of this cycle? Because again, from this perspective and in general in the book, we really talk about, anxiety is anxiety. That will happen, that will show up. But really a lot of times what keeps anxiety stuck, it's our resistance and our continued unwillingness to have it. So it's like the more anxiety is doing its thing, the less you're willing to have it, the more it's going to kind of stay really up here. And so really shifting into, can you start to let go of that struggle with the anxiety to kind of reduce its power in your life? But again, part of that is knowing that there's still going to be moments of discomfort or pain. And that's just kind of part of the buy-in. And unfortunately, because we all have those moments. I hope you're encouraged to go pick up the book. I really did enjoy going through it. I thought there were so many good exercises in here. Look at the description below to get more information on links on where you can get the book or more about the author. As well, I'm also still doing a monthly book giveaway. So if you're interested in potentially winning a copy of the book, also check down below to get the link or where you can enter. And as always, I hope you guys continue nurturing your mind, body, and soul, whatever that looks like for you. Alrighty, bye.